Hello, and welcome to American Dream Latin Souls. I'm Daniel Ortiz, and today my guest is entrepreneur Jeff Posa. Jeff, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you for having me.
Now, Jeff, you have a very interesting business. You are the president of Posas El Merendero, Inc., which is basically a family business that has grown to tremendous heights. Your father started, I believe, and so we want to talk about your story of starting a business from homemade New Mexico food, and where you've taken it from where it started to where it is now. But before we get into your story, the question that we have is, what is your American dream, and what does it mean to you?
My American dream is the success and reaping the benefits of the success of achieving something that you have built, that you have seen grow, that you have experienced growing, and trying to share that success with all your loved ones, and that is my dream of success.
Okay, that's a unique. I would say unique, but it's one of the things that distinguishes Hispanic entrepreneurs versus entrepreneurs in general. And I think it was Mass Mutual did a study of the reasons people go into business, the reasons they start a business, and Hispanics. One of the main reasons, I think it was 70% compared to like 40% of the population at large, Hispanics start businesses to provide for the family and to create something, for the family. So it's generally a family affair. So tell me a little bit more about that, to reap the success and to experience it. So do you get satisfaction from creating something that's totally your own?
Yes, the American dream is something different to everybody, and my American dream started when I was young, when I saw my parents growing into the restaurant business, into the food business, actually from scratch, learning it from my grandparents, but actually taking it that step further into name recognition, as our business has here in this local community of Santa Fe. But that tradition and that recognition of Posas has always been something that has always been something real proud to us, in knowing that we can go around town and knowing that people have experienced our food, our restaurant, our tamales. I was going to ask you that.
So people come up to you, strangers, and say, "Hey, Posas, I eat
all the time."
Is that right?
All the time. Yes, it's kind of hard, sometimes just going to the post office or going to the grocery store, because you're always, finding people that you've known from forever, and they come and they tell me, we just had some catering done from your restaurant. We just had your tamales for Christmas time, or they're introducing me to other friends and family, saying, "No, come here. I want you to meet this. This is the man that owns the restaurant that you love the chili and the tamales and everything else like that." So
very good. So you built a brand, essentially.
Exactly.
It's a brand.
Exactly. It's
so for our audience, what is the scope of Posas? It's named Posas El Merendero, and is there a story or behind the name? And tell us the scope of the business.
El Merendero actually was a cafe started by my grandparents on Galisteo Street in downtown Santa Fe. This was in the mid-50s, and we were they went from the cafe to just producing tamales and burritos, and the tamales actually was the history of our company. My grandmother would be making tamales in a kitchen that my grandfather had built for her. He was a teacher in the Santa Fe School District back then, and she would be at home making tamales. My grandfather would come buy her all the ingredients, all the stuff to make the tamales. He'd go out and sell the tamales to different little markets here in town, Tito's grocery store, County's grocery store.
So your grandfather had an entrepreneurial bent.
Yes. Yes.
So you started from selling, basically to the local community. And what's the scope of Posas now? You've taken it to a whole new level. It's seven-figure, $1 million business now. I
The
believe.
the business changed hands in 1977. My parents purchased the company from my grandmother and my grandfather, and made it El Merendero Posas. And the word merendero means the snack. La merienda in our Hispanic culture is the snack right before you would go back to work during the siesta time, and we'd all, get together and say, we need to have la merienda right before we go back to work. So
What's the
merendero
scope of
came
the
from that.
business now? It's
The scope, we
You have restaurants?
produce tamales and burritos and pozole on a wholesale level. We distribute to Cisco Foods, Benny Keith Foods, Shamrock Foods. We distribute into grocery stores, Albertsons, Smiths. We distribute through our distributors to a lot of local restaurants, restaurants outside of Santa Fe, throughout New Mexico. We have distributors in Oklahoma City. We private label for a distributor up in Denver called Tamales of Denver. There's some restaurants, also popular restaurants, that I kind of don't like to give their names because we private label for them also and their tamales.
So you've grown from, again, selling to the local community to, restaurants. Private label, Cisco's a huge food organization, distributor. I don't know what the technical term, what they do.
Yes, they're a big distributor in
Cisco's
the
huge.
country, yes.
So you've taken it from basically mom and pop business to big business. So do you see yourself like as the McDonald's of tamales? Because Posa's, your
That'd be
brand,
nice.
you have a strong brand. Posa's is known for good quality food, tamales especially. And I don't think it'd be Christmas without Posa's tamales.
Yes, that's that. I started actually vending tamales door to door. My
So you were a
father.
salesman.
Yes, I was a salesman at the age of 8. We'd come home from school. We'd make tamales after school, and on weekends we'd go sell them door to door.
Is that right?
My dad would pack up the station wagon, pack up the coolers, and we'd go up to Chimayo, up into Los Alamos, into Espanola area, go to all those rural areas and go sell my tamales door to door.
I've said this in throughout the programs, through other interviews, is entrepreneurs, I believe, are born, not made. And the seeds of entrepreneurship usually show themselves early. A lot of entrepreneurs start off when they're young. They sell paper airplanes, they sell newspapers, they're selling something. So you fit that pattern. So as an entrepreneur, you're selling door to door tamales, and that you're still selling tamales, right?
Oh yes. In fact, people tell me all the time. They say, "So what do you do for a living?" And I tell them I sell tamales. When they don't know me, it's kind of like, "What do you mean you sell tamales?"
Right.
And and I tell them I produce and I sell tamales. That's my line of business.
Yeah, but you do it on a big scale now.
On a bigger scale. On a bigger scale. It's we want to see it grow further, of course. Being that entrepreneur in us, we want to see it expand and reach out to a lot more people than it has already.
All right. Well, it's very strong here. Do you think the rest of the country is ready for tamales? I remember there's a funny story when George Bush Sr. was running for office. He had come to New Mexico campaigning, and they had an event in Albuquerque, I believe it was, and they served New Mexican food. And I guess he had never had a tamale before, but he was trying to eat it with the husk still on
The husk, and that's right. He was trying to cut through the tamale.
You remember that story?
Yes. In fact, it wasn't not too long ago that I heard that story again. And
so do you think that the country, America, is ready for tamales?
Yes. Oh, yeah, definitely. The Hispanic culture has reached all across this country, and the more that happens, the more our culture gets exposed, and our food is a big part of our culture.
Well, a lot of people that come to New Mexico from out of state, once they have the chili, they're hooked.
Yes.
I mean, it's like just that one first meal, they're hooked. So
New
it's really
Mexican-
getting exposed.
New Mexican food is quite unique to other foods throughout the country as far as being Hispanic. Mexican food and New Mexican food, two different
things.
cuisines. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so one of the questions I was going to ask is, what does Hispanic how does being an Hispanic influence your version of the American dream? And your family, actually, your father's from Spain originally, right?
Yes, yes.
He was born in Spain. You're first generation.
I'm first generation. Yes.
Okay.
Now, you know that question, how does being Hispanic influence or affect the American dream? That I think we're different than let's say non-Hispanics, like your white people, your black people, and your Native Americans, for the mere fact that we have the immigration obstacle to get past, and that occurred in our family too. My grandmother is from Mexico. Her and my mother immigrated to the United States. And my father immigrated from Spain in the late 50s, early 60s, and that alone, trying to get all that behind you, and to start
legally or
legally to get all that behind you legally, to get started in that American dream, is one facet that I don't think non-Hispanics have to deal with.
Right, right.
So that immigration obstacle is a big one to get past.
Okay. Now your father obviously is a big influence in your life, and he's got an interesting story. He was, I believe, a professional wrestler at one time, and world champion, I believe. So tell us about your father.
My father is from a town called Ejea de los Caballeros in Spain. He frequents quite often. He just recently lost his brother a few years back, but he was blessed enough to go back and see his brother before he passed away. But yes, he was a sheep herder in Spain. He watched a wrestling match in the fiestas when he was around 10, 12 years old. And he was just in awe of watching these guys in the ring, doing their thing. And
now this is at Greco-Roman wrestling.
No, this was actually
the gorgeous
professional.
store.
Yes, exactly. This was already
the blonde guy that was popular here. Hogan
Hulk
type. That's
Hogan.
that type of
yes,
wrestling. Yes,
that type of wrestling.
Okay, so it was entertainment.
It was entertainment, and he loved it. I mean, he said, that's what I want to do. And
from 10 years old.
Exactly, 10 years old, coming from a town of maybe 8,000 people, 10,000. Because remember, he was a sheep herder, so all his friends are kind of like, yeah, right. You're never going to do that, and that was his dream. That was his dream. That's what he wanted to do, and. So he, at 20 years old, all males in Spain have to serve in the military. So when he turned 20, he went to the military, and that's when he got involved into Greco-Roman wrestling, which is an amateur type of wrestling that they had in the military back then. And he pursued that, knowing that would be his avenue to do other things, and he ended up being a national champion in Spain. When he took that title, he was approached by a promoter asking him if he wanted to travel the world, and that's exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to leave Spain. He told his friends he would never die in Spain.
Is that right?
So yes. So he ended up traveling Europe, down into Africa, South America, coming into Mexico in 1962. He ended up taking the world championship in wrestling, and a year later, my mother graduates from Loreto Academy here in Santa Fe, and goes down to Mexico to go visit her aunt for that summer, her summer trip. And back then in the 50s, especially the Hispanics, they took care of their daughters, quite. So it was quite a trip to have her sent to Mexico to go visit, and she ends up meeting this world champion wrestler who's always in the magazines, always on television. Down there in Mexico City is really big, and she ends up meeting this man at this hotel. They were doing a photo shoot of him poolside, and my mother and her cousin were invited to this pool party, and they ended up meeting. She ends up going home telling my aunt and uncle that she met this man who's a wrestler, and they were big wrestling fans. And my uncle was kind of, no, you're not. You're only 18 years old. What do you think your grandmother's going to tell me when? Yeah. But you know what? They ended up marrying 3 months later.
Right.
And so and they just.
So you and your brothers were in high school and college. I think your brother, one of your younger brothers, is a college.
Right. We all wrestled, in high school and college. My brother Javier was actually took it the furthest. He was actually sixth on the Olympic ladder at one time.
Is that right?
He wrestled for the University of Oklahoma. He was a full scholarship athlete there, and enjoyed it.
Okay, so one of the patterns I see with Hispanic entrepreneurs is we take from our culture and we take from our lineage. I mean, and you've done both. I mean, you've taken the Spanish culture, the food, the chili, and the lineage of your grandparents and your father being in the business, and you've created something. You've taken it to the whole new level, and you've added your entrepreneurial spirit. So, what would your grandfather say if he knew the scope of what that little business, the tamale business, in your grandmother's kitchen? Well, what would he think today?
Oh, he'd be real proud. He would be real proud of us. He would look back and see that we're still actually making the tamales the same way my grandmother made them. We did, there for a moment as I came into the business part of the company, of the wholesale part of the company, I should say. I wanted to see things happen a little bit faster. I wanted to produce more tamales in a shorter amount of time with less people. All those big ideas that a young person.
The business school stuff, the MBA.
That's
kind of
right,
stuff,
exactly.
Right. Oh, forget about quality. Just get it out there. Right.
Get it out there. And so when I became head of the company, right away I started to look into these machines. There were sausage stuffers that would actually make tamales, and so they were made in Ohio, back east somewhere, back in the Midwest, and we got these machines, got them into Santa Fe, started making tamales by machine. You know what? It was my mother told me too. She says, "Son, that's not going to work." She says, "Mom, don't worry about it. Just go retire, go do whatever you need to do. Let me take care of it." Right. And sure enough, about a year and a half later, I called up the company. I tell them, "You know what? I need to send these machines back because it's not working."
What's the difference? I mean, what is it?
Well, all the ingredients were the same. That's what I figured.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, so what's it going to be?
Right.
But there is a big difference. There's a difference big enough that my customers noticed. And when my customers noticed and they saw that it wasn't the same thing, a lot of them left me. A lot of them said, "We're not going to."
These are not Posa's tamales
These aren't
anymore.
Posa's tamales no more.
Yeah.
But my good customers, the ones that really wanted me to succeed, told me, and they said, "You know what? You got to go back. You got to go back."
What was the
to being
difference?
handmade."
What was the difference?
Danny, the difference is, I think, just that I think the machines would process the ingredients too much as they were being, manufactured, and it was just, the type of machine that we were using at the time. But it just didn't have that.
Well,
that
here's the magic
quality.
ingredient. I think we all know that we have our mother's cooking, and we go to a restaurant. Two different things. Could be the same ingredients, but they say it's the mother's love that goes into the. And so, do you think there's an element of that, or just the handcrafted part of it? I mean, that it's something that you can't really define. But what
yeah, well, it's the love that my family has for.
That goes into the food.
That goes into the.
I remember that movie, like Waterford Chocolate. I believe it was all about that. Is what went into it.
Right. Well, that's that's a big part of it. I mean, you're not only the ingredients have to go into your food that you're producing, but your love, your culture. I mean, there's been plenty of times that my managers would come up and say, "What if we change this, or we change this ingredient for this other ingredient?" And ever since I experienced that major change that I had with the tamale making, I said, "No, we're not going to do that. We're going to stick to the way we do it." Right. I mean, my pork tamales and my chicken tamales, the masa's made out of lard. Lard is a 4-letter word now in today's society.
It's not green or
right,
not,
exactly.
Organic
And I've had plenty of people come up and ask me to start making my tamales with vegetable oil because it's healthier. Right. And I told them I can't do that. my grandmother would turn over in her grave if she knew that I was using vegetable oil instead of manteca.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it was the manteca that was always the basis of her masa. You know,
Right.
so. But things like that, yes, we don't mess with what we already have.
Okay, so that's one of the questions when I ask you as an entrepreneur. It's not the easy path, right? It's not like people who work for a business or state government. They got guaranteed jobs or virtually guaranteed with set income. So what are the challenges that you've had to face as an entrepreneur? And obviously, aside from that one self-inflicted wound that you recovered from, what are the challenges that you
the challenges in being an entrepreneur and a small business owner, I have to say is government regulation.
Okay.
It does take a big part of our business.
Well, the food business probably.
The food business is it takes a big part of it because there's a lot of regulation in food. Our industry is one of the higher end in cost of doing business.
Is that right?
Type of industry, yes, because not only do we have to deal with a lot of labor, we have to deal with a lot of machines that constantly need maintenance, refrigeration, mixers, grinders, food processors. All these things that you have to maintain and keep up. So then if we're going to start delivering our product, we got to start, getting drivers, and we got to start getting vehicles to start, So, financially is a big challenge too. Finances, our industry has a bad reputation with banks. Banks.
Yeah, a lot of restaurants close. They open.
A lot of restaurants close, right. And I don't blame the banking business. They have to do what they got to do. But yes, we have a bad reputation. People go in, take money out to build their restaurant. Take money out on their house, and those consequences can get pretty heavy.
Right. Well, a lot of people don't realize in any business, but I believe in the food business in particular, it's not just about having great food. I mean, some people may have a recipe for something and think, well, if I open a restaurant and we built this whole business around this food, money comes flying in, you have customers, and that's half right?
Yes. Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's more, there's the business end of it, which is, you just gave us a short glimpse. And so you've had government regulations are a challenge, financing is a challenge. What else, just as an entrepreneur, have you overcome? What challenges have you overcome? Because to take from when you started off in your grandfather, your grandmother in the kitchen selling and going door to door as a young man, a young boy actually, and taking it to you're selling to Cisco now, and
breaking the ice in a lot of avenues. You have to in order to get into that grocery store, you need to actually get a hold of the main person, the person that's gonna be able to put you into that grocery store. You gotta
sell. Is what I'm hearing.
You gotta sell. You gotta be a salesman. You have to be able to believe in your niche, in your product. In my case, in my tamales, to go up and say, you know what, I don't have to talk to you 2 minutes. Just sit down, eat this. Are you hungry? Eat these tamales, and I mean that was the first way I would
That's a great sales pitch.
Walk into a restaurant, into a new store. I'd go see the manager. I'd say, "Have you ever had any good tamales lately?" He's kind of like, "Well, what do you mean?" He says, "I have some samples of tamales here. Would you please, take a look at them, eat them, and here's my card. Give me a call after you eat them." And a lot of times that's all I would do, and they would call me up and say, "You know what? I'd never liked tamales before, never even was interested in tamales. I don't even have a tamale plate on my menu. Right. But come back here and let's talk."
Okay. So you're a salesman again.
Salesman, yes.
And you learned, I guess if you start off selling, I started off selling when I was younger, paper airplanes, in the neighborhood from Life magazine. They make really cool airplanes. And like I said, a lot of entrepreneurs, when they're young, they're selling lemonade or something, but they're salesmen. And I think once you get over the fear, if you're young, of selling whatever it is, it's nothing anymore to sell at a higher level, right? Because you've breaking that ice. But a lot of people selling, they may have a great product, they may have a great business, but actually selling them, they're scared to death and their business dies, or they have to get somebody else to do the selling, which you never do sell as good as no one else can sell your business the way you can.
Sure.
Is that right?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I mean, that's.
So your dad helped.
passion.
So your dad kind of trained you when you were young.
Oh yeah. I mean, you got to understand. My father started this business and grew this business. I mean, pretty big. By the time I got it, but he grew it without knowing the English language.
Wow.
Spanish was my first language because my father knew nothing else. My grandmother knew nothing else. My mother and my aunts, and they all knew English because they were already educated in this country. But my father never has picked up the English language. And so he's always, I mean, my father was touring Tennessee, Georgia, Arkansas when he was wrestling by himself. Right. He'd get in there and he'd say, "Oh, it doesn't matter." I would ask him, "Dad, how did you tell the cab driver where you needed to go?" He says, I'd get off the train, I'd find myself a cab, and he'd say, "Where do you need to go?" I'd open up my suitcase, I'd show him my boots, I'd show him my cape, and and he said, "Oh, you're a wrestler. Okay, come here, let me show you where I got to go."
That's funny.
So, but no, and you can't be afraid of rejection, period. I mean, rejection you're going to have all your life.
You're going to get it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you're afraid,
even you have the best tamales in the world.
That's
Some
right.
people, not everybody likes tamales.
That's right. Exactly.
Right. That's big. Overcoming objection is definitely something that entrepreneurs face on a regular basis. So, tell me, what role does family play in your business? We've got about 2 minutes left. What role does family play in your business and in your American dream?
Well, family's always been involved in business, in our business. My siblings all worked a part of the company, either the production part or the restaurant part of our company, but they all ended up, leaving and doing their own thing because that's what they wanted to do. But me, I think being the oldest, being around it the longest, having really a passion to see, like I said, my name recognition out there. Yeah. I gotta say, I'm kind of egotistical in that way. The more I see my name, the more I see Posas out there, the prouder I get, and I need to let my family know and understand, which they already do, of course, because they grew up around it. That's where it's at. You really need to get your name out there, and you really need to be out there known for what you do.
Right. Well, you're definitely on your way to do that, and the Posas brand is pretty solid here, and it's growing. So, in the minute we have left, what advice would you give to any budding entrepreneur? Anybody who wants to start a business or expand a business, what advice? What are the Posa success principles?
Well, you have to go with your passion.
Okay.
Passion is I think the biggest word in answering that question, because without it, you're going to lose interest. You're going to lose the drive to keep going when they knock you down, because you're going to get knocked down a lot.
Is that right?
And you're going to get knocked down a lot, and I'm sure, Daniel, I'm sure have experienced it also, and just got to get right back up and keep doing it. But just make sure, like, you got to keep following your dream.
Right. Great advice.
So,
well, Jeffrey, thanks for sharing your story. We love your tamales and your food in New Mexico, and we look forward to seeing it expand on a national basis in the near future. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. And I want to thank our audience for joining us on American Dream Latin Souls. Thank you.
Thank you.